set up to stream this to Facebook.
Great. I still have this dual thing. I have a computer that has no audio, and so I'm looking at my screen, but you know, try to
Click hot.
get you guys too.
Oh.
I don't know what I did. I know where we went. I need to say something. It's hard to hear. My videos don't work.
They're not going to hear you because you're muted.
Can anybody hear us?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, for some reason our video isn't showing. I'm not sure what we need to do, but we're on here.
That
David Giesling.
That is okay. As we get started, you can introduce yourself in a second, and then the video is okay that it's not showing.
Okay, thank you.
We're just getting ready. I'm gonna stream it to Facebook in a second, so I'm just getting that set up, and then we'll get started here just in a minute.
Haley, that is a cool looking space behind you. So are you streaming from the Biz Foundry, Sparta?
I am, yes. I work
Yay.
here 2 days a week. There's an upstairs too, like the conference room, and some private offices are up there, and the conference room's really pretty. Has like a wall of windows.
Gorgeous. Well, you're right across from the space that we have on Bachman. So, and Jimmy's
Okay.
in that, and we sent him over there some angry ironsmith help.
Oh yeah, I know Jimmy. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
He's the guy that used to work for Fast Signs, right?
yes, he did. Used to work
Yeah.
with Fast Signs. Mhm.
Yep.
He's doing beautiful things, and we've appropriated our space on Bachman for him to use to have a shared merchandising space in the front and a maker space in the back, so that he's going to do experientials as well as make things himself, and so make product, teach product making, and it's really exciting. But he wanted some help getting the business pieces started, and
Is there
I
a
think
back door to that building?
yes, there is.
Oh, 'cause there's that alleyway that there's that pottery studio that's back in that alleyway too.
Thor.
Yeah. Which would kind of like lend its way to makers. Like that's just such a great community there.
Yeah. Thor, AKA the pottery Nazi. That's how he self-references. And I was in one of his classes once, and it was, I told Susan that, you know, he told me hand building was my future, to get away from the wheel, just step away from the wheel. It was never going to happen. So anyway, I might try my hand at forging with Jimmy at some point.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. But I referenced him over to the Biz Foundry. He needs a plethora of help and thinking through, and I think his business is about to explode in a good way. I shouldn't use that word. It's about to really take off.
Well, we can get started. I think we're streaming now to Facebook. Yep. I'm Tiffany Anton, and I am with the Biz Foundry, and we are the local entrepreneur center here in Cookeville, Tennessee. We have 3 co-working spaces in Cookeville, Sparta, and McMinnville. Great minds came together about 6 months ago and said, how can we help entrepreneurs and small business owners kind of just come to one place and get all the resources that we need? And so we formed the Business Resource Collective with WCTE. Becky Magura is here from WCTE, with Center for Rural Innovation through Tennessee Tech, with Small Business Development Center here that represents the Upper Cumberland as well. Partners, I think I did. And so Kelly Hunter is the leader for the Business Resource Collective.
Nice.
Smith is another one of our team members at the Biz Foundry. And if we want to, if the other couple, oh, we just lost him. David, if you want to introduce yourself, just so we have an idea of who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Of course, my name is David, and our business is called the Chris Designs, and we are here in Cookeville. And I was actually, of course, born here in Cookeville, but you know, we do stuff like pillows and curtains and stuff like that.
Nice.
Well, welcome. And if all that we have on the call, but we are streaming to Facebook and we are recording this as well. So we'll have Haley watch those comments if there's questions there, and we can type them into the chat. But I'm really excited. Lisa Urich is a great business owner in town. She cares about the entrepreneurial systems a ton. And so we were talking a month or two ago about just her knowledge on merchandising, and Franklin Fixtures is mainly in bookstores, but some of the ideas that she was given some of the restaurant owners in town, and just her knowledge, I felt like would really be beneficial to people who sell anything. And so without further ado, go ahead, Lisa, and introduce yourself.
Hi, well, it's great to be here. And I do love the Biz Foundry and all the work that is going on there, and believe so much in what you've done, and appreciate so much in what you've done for our business and for the folks that we're supporting. And yes, we get to Franklin Fixtures is about creating display solutions, and we do that all over the country mainly for specialty retail, small businesses that are owned and that need to reach communities. And we really feel like we're creating community spaces that people enjoy. And so I've been a student of merchandising and how we create that for the last few years, and am excited to share what I've learned, and also to engage with questions and anything else that we can come up with. I'd like this to be dialectic rather than just a presentation, but so please, as you have questions, I'd love to divert and go through. But merchandising magic is what we call this, and I chose an interesting picture that has nothing to do with merchandising, so it would appear, because really what we're about is storytelling. Merchandising is about telling good stories. It's about creating an aspirational space where that speaks to how people want to live and what they want to become, or inspiration for new ideas that, merchandising clearly communicates that, or it creates this connection with our lives. It helps us comprehend new thoughts. And so this is the kind of thing that you can't find while just scrolling through your Amazon cart or account. Merchandising is what we do to really come together with a customer. So today we hope to answer your questions, spark some new ones. This could be like a masterclass brief on connecting more deeply with customers. That results in increased sales, increased profit, and moving away from price point differentiation, but really ultimately loyalty to your brand. I'm introducing Millie here. She's my
Lisa, go ahead and share your screen again. So we're not sharing, the screen is not shared, but go ahead.
Okay. The screen is not shared. Let's see.
We turned that off for a second, just so we could introduce ourselves, but go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, share.
There you go.
Okay, so now you can see what I'm talking about. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's the image. So we're talking about storytelling, and we make displays that serve our clients as the silent sales staff. So that's what we're going to talk about, how you use displays for online or for in-person engagement. And we've really learned a lot. We serve all kinds of retail, but primarily aim at bookstores, libraries, and museum specialty stores. But really, we're in a lot of different spaces. But what we love about the customers that we serve is that you are leading our community and country toward creating our best lives. You're the space where we get together. You're the spaces where we have conversations and where we dream about our lives. And that really is helping us craft our future. It's been a beautiful year in the sense that our bookstores and libraries have just really been critical resources in all of the difficulties that we've faced this year. And they've done that online and they've done that in person, and they've done it through merchandising. So I'm going to start in a weird space. Merchandising is a creative act. It is a discipline and it's a daily practice. My husband loves washing the dishes. And so he was really happy when I gave him this book, How to Wash the Dishes by Peter Miller. It is literally about washing dishes. And it step by step, but it's also about something deeper, which is that, how that daily act, that daily discipline is part of the beauty of what we create. And in our retail spaces, a lot of times we can get it just overwhelmed, and it's hard to find time to really create the merchandising of our dreams. But I'm going to ask you to think of it like washing dishes, because as Peter says, you'll know your state of mind when you wash the dishes. Your care or impatience, your attention or distraction, you will see yourself at that moment clearly. So every time we do some merchandising, we have the opportunity to kind of assess ourselves in a deep way. And that's an unusual kind of place to start, but it's really, we're talking in display, we're talking about telling stories. And just like any other place, only you're telling a visual story and people are walking into a story when they walk into your store. So whatever it is that you're bringing to your clients, you're inviting them into two main storylines. There are essentially two: a person goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town. So as you think about creating those storylines in every display, it's really an unusual way to think about. We can talk about fundamentals like color flow and pyramiding, and there's all kinds of specifics, but this one kind of gets at the heart of it if you go for storytelling. And here you see a great example from Amelia Island, from a bookstore. And what words pop out to you when you see this display? The one in the middle. Can you see it? Anybody? Let's see.
Plenty more.
Plenty more. Yeah, there's fresh and happy and plenty and more. And there's pottery and dish towels and books and flowers, and all together, there's a story there. And it's a story about how to have more and plenty and fresh and happy. It can be that simple, and to tell that story. So I'm going to start with an object, because I think a lot of times great merchandising starts with a story that's personal. And bringing yourself into your store is one of the best ways that you can create a made here space, a space that feels local and it doesn't feel like you're walking into some chain from across the country. And I'm going to start with my grandmother's silver tray, which I pulled off of the wall a couple of days ago. And I began to polish it. And as I did, I sort of washed the dishes, and I remembered who I am and who I want to be. My grandmother was a teacher in Baxter for 45 years, and this was the tray given to her at her retirement. And as I looked at it, I thought about her role in education and community and service and in small business. She was a small business owner. And if you look at what happened in her world as a small business owner in 1973 and 1974, she had been through some tough times. And here she and her sister are transferring the business to other owners. The small business has always had things to overcome. So that's all in that tray for me. So when I merchandise that tray, when I add something like remarkable manuscript, she was an English teacher, I'm creating a special space for display. This is a simple merchandising display, but that book is going to get looked at. And when it does, it's infused with my own story, just like it can be infused with yours. And I could speak to that story. I could speak to my grandmother. I could speak to how much she would love this book and hand sell that book. It becomes part of the merchandising. I could also add books like Heidi and these classics that she also liked and change the display. Or I can do something called, it's a pattern language called scarceness and specialty. When people are going into a store, they're looking to discover, they're looking for an experience. They're not, it's something they cannot find with their phone in their lap at home. So, Year in Flowers with Flowers, that is saying that's a special gift book that they're not going to bump into in other places. Reveal what's essential about your displays and make it really just pop out. The words on a book narrate a display. So if you want to use books in your display, it's a good way to do that. You've got choices. So like my grandmother's cookbook, or I could add other things like spoons and other recipes and create more, or I could do a full story like I did for Father's Day. And here we have cards, we have books. Again, what do you see in this display? What words pop out?
Strongest thing.
Yeah, the strongest thing about a dad is his love. So here we have, my husband with his fish, some vintage ties, some postcards or cards along with Books Are Magic, Officer Clements, that great book that is out with Father Online. So this is a whole little vignette. Now, this is also a Father's Day display, and it's really nicely done. It's got color flow. It's got product coming together. It looks neat. It's not overwhelming. You can see the chalk crayons at the bottom, and they're using the slat wall. They're using the angles to really create the eye angulation. So it's a good display, but I think this is a better one because there's more story power here. So that's kind of what we're after everywhere. And if I was going online with a simple display, I'd take this is Millie when she was 9 weeks old, and her love of flowers caused her to lose an eye. It was rather tragic right away, but we got her this little snuffle pad. It's a great way. I could talk about this whole snuffle pad and what that meant in our lives and what that meant for developing her nose in the absence of her eye and all of that. And this product would become very interesting. So that's another, merchandising again is rooted mostly in the stories. When you look at this is from Politics and Prose in DC. And it's a beautiful puck wall display. And they've done a nice job of not overcrowding it and of creating things. But what is this display about? I have a hard time figuring that out. And if I cannot quickly comprehend the display, if I can't in 5 seconds tell you what the story is, then it's not the best display it can be. This one's a better one, in my opinion. It also brings the outside in. They've used a tree trunk that was from a tragedy with Katrina on the island, and they've got the story of the author along with the books and the outside in, the nature. So, windows, making connections, plants, flowers, all of that can be really nice. Anytime you bring the outside in to a display and you're bringing in nature, it's going to have a certain life to it. But again, the difference between this, a pretty display, and this one that invites you to read the story, to understand, to get involved. If you look at the Restoration Hardware catalog recently, you don't look at any item without understanding the story of the maker or the designer. So everything is centered in that. Here's an aspirational life story created at the same place. And this says to me, this is, what beach living is all about, or what island living is about. I'm going to have friends over. I'm going to have flowers. It says, this is my happy place. There's splash and water and all those product adjacencies. When we pull products together that are not, that are all part of the same scene. If you think of yourself like a set builder for a movie or for some kind of drama, that this is the thinking we want to have in retail. We also want to craft a thank you space, and kind of backing away to the whole space. This space got created in a couple of weeks in New York, and the lighting is just exquisite. And what Lisa Gazashti, who created it, was telling me is that everybody who walked in from the busy street, they walked in, they exhaled, and they said over and over again, they said, thank you. thank you. And she said that it was so weird. They were just walking around saying, thank you. So people need, when they leave their homes today, they want to go into a thank you space, whether that's coffee, or whether that's bread, or whether that's a bookstore. So here we've got, some color flow at the top. The interesting thing about this is that it featured product that is remainder product, which is really kind of almost not secondhand, but it's not the exquisite best product, and it's sold like it was. They had just amazing sales because the light and the way the product meets the light, things don't sell in the darkness, and the way things were just offered as special. And when you're doing that, you want to align with your staff. You want to make sure that the staff is on the same page. And here I'm looking at things about response to the virus, and because safety is a thing coming into a retail space from a merchandising standpoint. Are we aligned about what our customers are needing right now, what our priorities are display, all of that. I see a question from Becky. Oh, maybe a question. Let's see. Advice for companies to create a thank you space for their staff. So I think any space has the potential, great question, thank you. Any space has the potential to be a thank you space. And think about the things that make us feel welcome. Human scale ceilings make us feel welcome, and spaces to sit where we can group or move the seating. Lighting is huge. I'll go back here. Soft lighting that lights up things that engage and invite us to touch, which is a real weird thing right now, but things that invite us to touch and to feel, because what we touch, we're 73% more likely to buy. But in a business setting, it's the same thing. We want folks to have a sense of connecting with their senses to our space, and of relaxing and exhaling. And there are little things. I'll have a resource at the end that is one that's really inspired me. It's called Pattern Languages, and I've pulled 34 patterns of successful spaces, everything from a sheltered entrance to an arrival space that lets you get your bearings, to pools of light that invite you to go to different spaces. And when you've got a small space to work with, you can still think in terms of warm colors. Small spaces are great because people are more comfortable there. I went to Kai, to the acupuncturist, last week here in Cookeville, and went into his space, and it was just beautifully. It was very welcoming. I felt very warm. I felt immediately like saying thank you. So that's a good business space example. A lot of our spaces are about rigor in display, removal, cleanliness, telling stories. There's a big piece of safety today, but always this is true, that we're looking at removing things. And when in retail, when you're using fixtures, some fixtures have superpowers. I like to say our fixtures have superpowers, and they're kind of hidden powers, again, aiming toward books, but also with any other merchandise, we don't bend down for things. So if we want to sell from the bottom, it either has to be a story that goes all the way from the top to the bottom, or it needs to be an angle we can see standing. Our shelves have these kinds of angles that help people see things and connect with product from a distance. But that's a thing to think about. Another is just editing a table to tell your story, with a variety of things. So even in a non-retail space, a business space, if you can tell your story with images, with books, with artifacts, with things that kind of engage the person who's entering your space, that's going to be this particular one has a bird book, and it has a vase, and it has brie and a scarf and all kinds of things. Again, product adjacencies pulling together a story. Another thing that's really important in retail especially is that waist high is where we buy. Waist high will fly. We can say it a lot of different ways, but waist high, not table height, waist height is where your product really gets its traction. So the counter height is generally a waist height. You see here in a little display where those books are up, it's waist high. And if you don't have waist height, create it. create it where you don't have it. We've you can stack things, again, take found objects from your life or your home, because that makes it feel like you, that makes it feel real, or use a riser or something to kind of build things up. You can pyramid, but you're trying to get to the waist, because I was in Sewanee a couple of weekends ago looking at our new bookstore there, and I took a riser, and I took 15 minutes and I kind of observed what was happening as people were shopping, and they were missing this marvelous book by Sarah Boykin, which I absolutely love. It's about house building and houses. So it's not a super popular one, but I put the riser up, and then I put the book at waist height along with some other books. And within another 15 minutes, that book got looked at like 5 times. And the 5th time it got purchased. And that was a book that hadn't sold at all in 6 months. So it's just really super powerful to put something at waist height. Here's another example of waist height. It's also color flow, and top to bottom, that candy, you see the candy, the kisses at the bottom, because it's all kind of connected. So when we have products and we can connect them in a way, I can quickly comprehend that there are 9 different types of candy right there. And it's like, it takes me a second to do. That's the kind of comprehension level we want to create with our displays. Color flow is an important thing, because our eyes, we love color. So here's an example of creating that color flow top to bottom with the oranges and the yellows and those lovely greens kind of carrying all the way through. You can see that here there's dimensional impact slat wall that we sell, which doesn't look quite like slat wall. It looks like brick, and then they've added a little base. But look what a beautiful job they've done with all the colors. It just really flows and feels fun, and flows into the tiered display that you see too. Here's another example of slat wall, which is really versatile, and you can use it for lots of different color flow. I love the way that they put the pins with the books. And again, I'm going to come to this place, and I'm going to buy a pen and a book, maybe 2, and the color flow kind of leads me there. You can do color with anything. So back to my little silver tray, I've got an open book now, and look what a difference a page makes with the color, from greens to oranges to more earth tones. So you set the tone, you can set the tone with an open book, just as simple as that, and then build out of that with the flowers or the candles or whatever else you want to include. Here's another example. I mean, just the difference in a closed book and an open book. We've added a good house is never done. So, again, we're teaching in display, telling stories that help people learn what we're about. What is your store about? What are you trying to help people discover when they walk into your store, or into your retail space? What do they need to know in the first 3 minutes of sitting in your space? Does it really communicate? Here's another slat wall. This is really on the retail side of superpowers for integrated display. Again, we're looking at plushes with books, with other things, co-locating things so that we have the Pat the Bunny story. And if I wanted to buy a gift, I've got several things that I can put together for a nice and easy gift. I don't have to go, I'm not going to shop sectionally. Like, I'm not going to go to the book section, then the plush section, then the wearables. I'm going to pull together something thematically that really feels like, hey, here's the story of Pat the Bunny and how important that is. Let's see, fixture top to bottom. Again, here's clarity and composition. This is a wall table that has slat wall, and really tells the story of birds. You see the blue bird at the bottom because you understand the birds at the top. So you go, these are birds found on the island. So you can see the birds and the flat wall table. So again, it's a story. So Becky, to your question of a retail space, you're telling stories every day. So if I walked into WCTE and I wanted to see what story are we about right now? And within 1 minute of being in your lobby, I know that story. I'm invited to be a part of it. And you guys do such a great job of doing that. But it's just that rigor and that intention of having everybody on the same page, that's the kind of thing we're creating. For those in retail who are selling cards, a lot of times we're given spinners. They're free. with the cards, but they don't sell the cards. Cards sell better like this, because you can see more. It's like going to look at paint chips. You see more when they're displayed like this, and your eyes can take it in more often, so more easily. So you've got 7 seconds and you're going to get 11 cards, versus a spinner where you might spend 5 or 7 seconds and get 2 or 3 cards. It's really amazing, that difference. Here's another example of a bookstore in St. Simon's that is using, the card display. They co-located one collection on that double-sided fixture, and that's a rolling fixture, so they can change. Change is another constant. We want to change our displays often, so that people can find things at waist height, and find new discoveries every time they enter our space. We're looking for clarity and composition, comprehension and connection. So here, again, a lot of product, you've got a tray and some pottery and a book, but always putting those things together to say, I comprehend this is about beach living. That makes sense to me immediately. So your displays should do the same thing. So the idea is to pick one area that you choose, and the Hawthorne experiment says that you'll get a 10 to 20% improvement in sales. Our experience is it's bigger than that. That when you pick one area that you want to really focus on for display, you pull in a personal thing from your life that's got a story, you tell a story on purpose, you make a plan, you will see an amazing level of improvement and engagement. So that's quickly the content I wanted to cover and give you something to choose on. I'd like to hear some of your questions, and let's talk a little bit more about your specific needs. So. Or if there aren't any questions, I'll maybe expire a little more. There's from a resource standpoint, at our website on franklinfixtures.com, we have, if you hit watch and listen, we have a lot of several podcasts, things that we've done along the lines of safety and merchandising and using fixtures and all of those things. I love these books. Pattern Language is my favorite book. For the last 20 years, nothing has eclipsed it. It has inspired everything we know about decorating. I think they owe their roots to this book. And so it's full of patterns for successful living and working and homes and throughout time and throughout the globe, the planet. So it's a really human pattern book. I've extracted some things. If you're looking more practically, of course, the Paco book, Why We Buy, is a classic about the science of selling things. The Paradox Choice is also a good one, Why More is Less. It touches on some of these things. And the other book about the surprising truth about moving others, Daniel Pink does a great job. So those are some resources to kind of get into. But this is really, kind of, I guess the offering today is really about thinking about display differently, being intentional about it, like we are when we wash the dishes in a good way, and thinking about the stories we want to tell and how we tell them, telling them through color flow, telling them through pyramiding or through the placement of objects, and seeing, just experimenting, because I think just like anything else that we try as a discipline, we need to see immediate success in order to be encouraged to continue. So if you pick just one small area and you do it and you see how people respond to waist high, you'll be forever doing, practicing that. It'll encourage and you can build on that.
So Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. So let's say I have a restaurant or a cafe, coffee shop kind of thing, and mainly I'm just selling coffee, or food, or pastries or snacks. So how could I don't necessarily have colors to incorporate, or what are some suggestions that you have for merchandising that kind of place?
Well, it's a great question. Anything you have. So let's take coffee. I'm believing that every coffee you chose for a reason. You selected that coffee. It's got a story. So why did you select that coffee? Who does it go to? Is it a fair trade coffee? Is it a coffee that comes from a particular roaster? Did you roast it yourself? If so, what's your story? So to put a picture of a person or people with a little story and put it as part of the display, and then pull in other things that go with the coffee, because that are part of the coffee experience. So additives, kinds of things to eat, things to, mugs that, your brand mugs, that sort of thing. You can create, there's several different ways that you can do. You could go with color flow with a single product, because you've got a lot of browns, or you do have color, you just have different colors, so you can take that. But the story thing is really an important, if I'm going to go to roast, or if I'm going to go to Poets, or I'm going somewhere, I want to feel like I'm drinking coffee that's special and that has a story. And I want to be able to tell the story of that coffee. And my husband buys Chobani, the yogurt, exclusively because he watched the story of the creator and he liked his why. And he liked why they were doing. People support our business because they understand what we're about and our story. And the most clicked on part of our website is the About Us page, because people want to know your backstory before. So any coffee shop can do that and tell, they can tell their story with coffee. I think that would be a first thing. And then use something like over at Red Silo, they use some of the dimensional impact slat wall, and they've pulled in different products and different things that are part of the brand, because when you go to that space, you like being part of the brand. So that's another big way of creating those warm storytelling displays. So.
Okay. Lisa, I have a question. So I feel like a lot of what you're talking about could be pulled into digital spaces as well. Like someone could create a product display that they display on their website, but obviously it would have to be to a smaller scale. So is there any advice you can give for producing these kind of displays in a more miniature format?
Absolutely. And great question, Haley. These are all great questions. Online, we're doing the same thing that we're doing in store without the touch. So online, I showed the little picture of Millie with her snuffle mat. That's a vignette that's engaging. So people and animals and those stories are part of what we want to tell. Also, online videos are really, people watch an average of 8 videos a day. So a short 1-minute story video that explains your display in your store is a huge way of incorporating that online. Otherwise, you create a picture with product adjacency. So maybe I create a map, and on it I put some reader glasses and I put some other things that I have for sale. So figure out, what you're selling or what you're communicating, and try to communicate in a visual, your products in a visual that people can get in less than 3 to 5 seconds. Because they're going to grab a lot more of your product with visuals than they do with words. So visuals and a little video where you're telling your story of this coffee or of whatever, those videos get hits. So that's a nice embedded way to do the merchandising. Great question.
Somebody had the question, Lisa, of how often should you change out your displays?
People hate me for the answer to this question, but it's another great question. Think about it like how often the place needs to feel fresh. And when they walk into your space, if you have someone that walks in 3 times a week, you'd want them to discover something new 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be big, but that sense of discovery is important. Every time someone enters your space. If your customers average weekly coming in or checking out your website, then you want to have weekly changes, but you want to have something that changes. It doesn't have to be everything, but it's the equivalent of fresh flowers in the kitchen. You don't have to rearrange the bedroom and living room and have them change, but there is a freshness to, right now it's Christmas season and you walk in and I just feel delighted by turning on the Christmas lights because it's fresh and it's rearranged. And in a couple of weeks, we'll take them down. And then again, it'll feel fresh and rearranged. So it has to communicate that sense of freshness and movement. And you're also creating a sense of scarcity, because you're like, just because this is here today doesn't mean it's going to be here next week. And pulling something up from the bottom of a shelf or from the back of your inventory to highlight it creates that freshness. And it can be a lot easier than we think, but it needs to happen pretty often.
I'm going to read, I know you're on the phone too, so I'm going to read this question to you. Could you talk about traffic flow, giving customers direction, focal points, featured products, product placement within the environment, science of planograms, signage, window versus in-store signage? How do you visually pull customers in and keep them engaged?
That is a lot of questions and a whole nother webinar. And in fact, there are 3 webinars that address 3 of those questions separately on my website on the Watch and Listen, but let me cover it quickly. The entrance to your space is incredibly important and should be part of your planogram. So how people discover or walk into your space, what's in the window that they see on the way should all be important pieces of thought. They need a covered entrance before they go in, a place to collect themselves when they do go in, a nice transition space. From a planogram, people are always going to go to the right first, almost always. So what's on the right, immediate right, is really important in your store planogram. That should highlight some of your best of the best, some of your features. Maybe that's the display you change most often. And then you want to think about flow. I've rearranged cash wraps so many times for people where they had positioned the cash wrap in such a way that the flow would cause them people to average missing 1/3 of the store. So you want to make it such that there is something drawing the person through the entire space. With pools of light are the first beckoning. They're like music. Light is to the eyes what music is to the ears. So it tells us how to feel about the space. It tells us how to behave in the space, and it tells us where to go. So a natural flow that begins on the right and kind of weaves all the way through your product is really important. It's also important to create those focal displays. You're creating little magical experiences all the way through, surprises all the way through. It's nice to have things that people can discover, doors people can open, to see something special, things people can lift, anything you one of the most brilliant spaces and business models is the nail industry, where you walk in and they say, what do they say? Pick your color, right? So no matter how much time you have, no matter how much waiting, you are creatively engaged from the moment you walk in that space, because you have now chosen a color and you've made a creative choice that's now part of the whole thing. So if you can engage in your display with something that connects to people making a choice, they'll make an investment and go all the way through. Past that, the waist high and looking at different levels and different spots for people to rest and linger along the way, along the journey, and just making sure your planogram is such that that you're thinking through all of those zones and planning an experience, just like you would plan a museum tour. It's a very similar kind of thing. That's the short version. There's more. The safety piece is real important right now, and through COVID. So a clear communication on the front end, a friendly communication on the front end is really important to getting alignment with customers. We've really struggled with that, especially in retail. And now as we reopen, or we have open retail, that's important. I've seen some people do some really good, keep it positive, keep it sweet, keep it nice, keep it productive and appreciative on that side. But there's a whole thing on safety and messaging. I think we've got a huge opportunity with the masks to say, to shout out these positive messages that we want to say. So
any thoughts on signage?
Signage is incredibly important because people are reading their way through your space and they're feeling. So your signage can be, I like everything from little signs that require you to read a little story, a couple of paragraphs, to big signs that help you navigate through. Someone should be able to see a pool of light and see a sign and know that that's a section that interests them, or that's an area that interests them. And you can get really creative with your signage, and you know, a lot of people are using chalkboard and other kinds of things, but signage is incredibly important. Again, think of, if you want to benchmark merchandising, benchmark a museum or a public space where you go through and they have just really good, people want to be able to explore on their own and then reach out for help when they need it and when they're ready for it. So signage enables that, them to be self-facilitating on their journey.
We just have a few minutes left. If anyone has any other questions that they want to ask Lisa, I think, Lisa, if you want, she put her email address up there. I can put it in the chat too.
Let me, whoops,
Pull
there it
back
is.
up.
Yeah,
There you go. So you can grab Lisa's email address if you want.
Lisa, I have a question. What's been your greatest challenge as an employer during this time period?
Ooh, challenge as an employer during this COVID time period. People expect an authority to make a decision for how they should be and act and do, what protection means, what safety means. And in this time period, we've had to become that authority. I mean, so that was challenging, with the help of OSHA, that have very clear guidelines. We've done that, and we created a safe environment. That I think the messaging that by keeping ourselves safe, we're protecting our business and we're protecting the incomes of every person there. So we've had several people who have had COVID, but because we wear masks all day, because we have the distancing protocols and the every 3 hour we're disinfecting, because we have those protocols, we've never shut down. We haven't needed to, because we're not spreading it there. But that message, everyone has thought very differently about the virus and about what it means. And most of our workforce has been sort of anti-maskers and not interested in that and not really seeing it as real. And so outside the workplace, they're living very differently. But I think our challenge has been communicating and keeping it about work and livelihood and not about politics. And keeping it about, what can we do? So it's been very challenging to be in that spot. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. That's helpful though. Thank you.
Yeah. So and one person turned us into OSHA. We weren't sure if it was for requiring masks or not, but when I called OSHA, and it was the best thing that could have happened, because OSHA had 15 guidelines that were the CDC guidelines. And there's a $7,000 per person fine for anyone not following them. So, and by calling in a complaint, then we're guaranteed a surprise visit. So we had those guidelines, we explained, everyone signed that they understood the guidelines. And suddenly I kind of had something to stand behind to say, listen, this is not my opinion based on what I'm reading in the CDC. This is general endangerment clause in the OSHA. So under that clause, here's what we have to do, so we've done it. And by doing that, we're protecting our livelihoods and our customers who depend on their livelihoods. So it's calmed down a lot there, and we've had, like I said, we've had 3 folks who have had COVID, and one who's lost a grandparent. And it's been enough of a touch that people are respectful, and that's one of our core values. So hope that's helpful. Yeah. But did you know there was an OSHA thing? I didn't know there was an OSHA thing.
I did not know that. So that's helpful for me to know. So thank you.
Yeah, there are 15 guidelines. They called me and they said, these are the 15 guidelines that we come into your workplace and they're not wearing masks, keeping distance. You don't have a sanitation protocol, you're in violation of OSHA. And I said, thank you. That's incredibly helpful right now. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. These are great questions. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we do and about merchandising and just making us all stronger. And, you know, I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again, the work that, you know, the work that you're doing, Becky, is just incredible for the country. But the work that, and the work that the Biz Foundry is doing, the work that all of us who are in small business are doing, we're really the folks shaping our community experience and shaping shaping the kinds of lives our communities live. You know, it's 99.9% of all the businesses in the country are small businesses, and retail. Even though it's become incredibly convenient to order things on Amazon or any place else, retail is alive and well. But we need those stories, the stories that you have to tell and the stories that only you can tell. So I sound like I'm working for WCTE, don't I?
Well, thank you. You have
Lisa, you always sound like you work for everybody.
She does. She does.
She's an
actually.
advocate of everyone, so we love it. Thank you guys so much for attending today. Definitely, if you have any questions on merchandising or just small business enthusiasm, it's great to kind of lend an ear and just give her thoughts and opinions to help the betterment of this community. So these business resource collective community calls happen every other week. Our next one is scheduled for January 13th at 1 p.m. We'll get out the topics for the coming year as we go forward. The thought is to bring you all together as a community and know that there's other businesses out there and how can we all work together to really better this area and better the entrepreneur system of this area. So we encourage you to come back and spend an hour with us every other week, no matter whether the topic is something that you feel like it really interests you or not. There's just a lot of small business help here. So if you have specific topics, I know we had some people jump on after we did the introductions at the beginning, but if you have specific topics that you really feel like you would like some direction on, please do not hesitate to send me an email, tiffany@thebizfoundry.org. It's in the chats. Send me an email, tell me what you are looking for or what resources you could use, or if you have a really great speaker that you think needs a platform to help the community, please let me know that too. I'm definitely looking for people to schedule out through the next first half of the year. And I'd love to meet people that can really help our small business community. So thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in 2021. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Lisa.